The fluorescent lights of the stop-and-go gas station buzzed like dying wasps against the thick Missouri night. Marcus Whitfield pulled his F-250 up to pump number 3. The diesel engines rumble, fading into silence as he cut the ignition. It was just past midnight on a Tuesday in late September, and the air still held the day's warmth. Heavy with the scent of cut hay and approaching rain, at 42, Marcus had the weathered hands and sun-creased face of a man who'd spent his life working the land. His family's farm 3,000 acres of prime Missouri bottomland had been passed down through 4 generations, and he'd spent the last 20 years building it into one of the most profitable operations in 3 counties. The locals called him a millionaire farmer, though Marcus never much cared for the label. Money was just numbers in an account. The land was what mattered. He stepped out of the truck, his boots hitting the cracked concrete. And that's when he saw the boy. The kid was sitting on the curb near the air pump, hunched over with his arms wrapped around his knees. Even from a distance, Marcus could see he was young, maybe 17 or 18, with a mop of dark hair that fell across his face. His clothes looked expensive but disheveled. A torn designer polo shirt and jeans that probably cost more than Marcus spent on clothes in a year. Marcus began fueling his truck, but his eyes kept drifting back to the boy. Something wasn't right. The kid's shoulders were shaking, and even with the distance between them, Marcus could see the dark bruise spreading across his left cheekbone. Visible even in the harsh gas station lighting, the pump clicked off at $73. Marcus replaced the nozzle and screwed the gas cap back on, then made his way into the station to pay. Jerry Mullins was behind the counter, half asleep over a hunting magazine. "Evening, Jerry." "Marcus." Jerry rang him up without much interest. "Late night. Checking on the north pasture fence. Thought I saw some cattle getting through earlier." As Marcus paid, he glanced out the window at the boy who hadn't moved. "Kid out there, been here long." Jerry followed his gaze and shrugged. "Showed up maybe 20 minutes before you did. Walked here, looks like. Ain't causing any trouble, so I left him be." Marcus nodded, pocketed his change, and headed back outside. He should just get in his truck and drive home. He had a 4:30 wake-up call coming, and the fence repairs wouldn't wait. But his feet carried him toward the boy instead. The kid's head snapped up, and Marcus got his first clear look at him. Even with the bruise blooming purple and yellow across his face, he was striking fine-boned features, green eyes that caught the light like creek water, and that thick, dark hair falling messily across his forehead. But it was the expression in those eyes that made Marcus's chest tighten. Raw fear mixed with exhaustion and something that looked like resignation. "I'm fine," the boy said, his voice hoarse. He turned away, clearly hoping Marcus would leave. Marcus didn't move. Up close, he could see more damage. Split lip, redness around the boy's neck that looked like finger marks, scraped knuckles. The kid had been in a fight, or something worse. "That's a pretty nasty bruise you got there." I said, "I'm fine." The boy's voice cracked slightly. Betraying him, Marcus looked around the empty gas station lot. "Where's your car?" "Don't have one." "How'd you get here?" "Walked." The boy pulled his knees closer to his chest, making himself smaller. "Walked from where?" "There's nothing but farmland for 5 miles in any direction." The kid didn't answer, just stared at the ground. Marcus sighed and lowered himself onto the curb a few feet away, his knees protesting the movement. He wasn't good at this sort of thing: conversation with strangers. Anything that required more emotional intelligence than negotiating grain futures. But he couldn't just drive away. "Name's Marcus Whitfield. I farm about 10 miles west of here." The boy was quiet for so long, Marcus thought he wouldn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper, "Ethan Sterling." "Well, Ethan Sterling, I don't know what happened to you tonight, but you can't stay here. This station closes in an hour, and it's gonna be a cold night. You got somewhere to go." Ethan's laugh was bitter, broken. "No. Family. No." The word came out harder this time. Final. Marcus watched a semi roll past on the highway, its taillights disappearing into the darkness. He thought about his farmhouse, empty except for him and his aging border collie, Sadie. He thought about his daughter's old room, unused for 5 years since she'd left for college and never really came back except for obligatory holiday visits. "You got a phone." Ethan pulled a cracked iPhone from his pocket. The screen shattered into a spiderweb pattern. "Dead battery. You hungry?" The boy's stomach answered for him, growling loud enough that even Marcus heard it. "Come on," Marcus said, standing and brushing off his jeans. "I'll buy you something to eat, and we can figure out what to do with you. I don't need charity." But Ethan's protest was weak, and when Marcus offered his hand to help him up, the boy took it after only a moment's hesitation. Inside the Stop and Go, Marcus loaded up on what passed for food: pre-made sandwiches, chips, a couple bottles of water, some chocolate bars. Ethan stood by the door, arms crossed, looking like he might bolt at any second. Jerry's eyebrows rose as Marcus paid. "That's a lot of food for one man." "Hungry night," Marcus said simply, and left it at that. Back outside, he gestured toward his truck. "Get in. You can eat while I figure out what to do with you." "I can just eat here," Ethan said. But he was eyeing the truck's cab with something like longing, the promise of comfort, of safety, even if temporary. "It's gonna rain soon," I can smell it. Unless you want to get soaked, I'd suggest getting in." As if on cue, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the fields. Ethan climbed into the passenger seat, moving carefully, like everything hurt. Once Marcus was behind the wheel, he handed over the bag of food. The boy tore into the first sandwich with desperate hunger that made Marcus's chest ache. This kid hadn't eaten in a while. They sat in silence while Ethan devoured both sandwiches and half the chips. The truck's interior light cast soft shadows across the dashboard, and rain began to patter against the windshield. Marcus waited, patient in the way farmers learn to be. You couldn't rush crops or animals or, apparently, hurt boys into trust. "Thank you," Ethan finally said, his voice steadier now that he had food in his stomach. "You're welcome, Koo." Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Now, you want to tell me who did that to your face?" Ethan's hand went automatically to his bruised cheek, then dropped. "Does it matter?" "Might matter to the police. No police." The panic in Ethan's voice was immediate and real. "Please, no police." Marcus raised his hands in a calming gesture. All right. No police." "But Ethan, I can't just leave you at this gas station. Jerry's gonna close up in less than an hour. And then what? You sleep on the curb until morning. I'll figure something out." "No, you won't. You got no phone, no car, no money I'm guessing, and nowhere to go." That about summed it up. Ethan's silence confirmed it. Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair, thinking. This was crazy. He didn't know this kid from Adam. Ethan could be a runaway, a criminal, anything. But looking at that bruised face and those exhausted eyes, Marcus's gut told him this was someone who needed help, not suspicion. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "You're going to come home with me tonight. You'll get a hot shower, a real meal, and a bed to sleep in. Tomorrow morning, when we're both thinking clearer, we'll figure out your next step. Sound fair?" "Why would you do that?" Ethan's eyes were wide with disbelief and suspicion. "You don't know me." "No, I don't. But I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." Marcus shifted in his seat to face the boy more fully. "When I was 19, my daddy died suddenly. Heart attack while driving the tractor. I inherited the farm, but I had no idea how to run it. Creditors were circling, wanting to break up the land and sell it off. I was drowning and too proud to ask for help." He paused, the old memory still sharp after all these years. "Man named Robert Chun owned the feed store in town. He saw me struggling, offered me a job working evenings, taught me business, helped me restructure the farm's debt, never asked for anything in return. When I tried to pay him back years later, he said, 'Marcus, You don't pay kindness back. You pass it forward. Marcus met Ethan's eyes. So that's what I'm doing. Passing it forward. No strings attached. You can leave tomorrow if you want. But tonight, you're coming home with me. Ethan stared at him for a long moment. And Marcus could see the war happening behind those green eyes. Trust versus survival instinct. Desperation versus pride. Finally, the boy nodded once, sharp and quick, like he might change his mind if he thought about it too long. Okay. Marcus started the engine. It's about a 15-minute drive. You can sleep if you want. As Marcus pulled out of the gas station lot and onto the dark highway, Ethan leaned his head against the window. The rain was falling steadier now, and the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers filled the cab. Within minutes, the boy was asleep, his breathing deep, and even the sleep of someone who'd been running on empty for too long.
Marcus drove carefully through the rain, his mind spinning with questions he wouldn't ask, at least not tonight. Tonight was about giving this kid a safe place to land. Everything else could wait until morning. The Whitfield farmhouse stood on a rise overlooking the eastern pastures. A two-story craftsman built in 1923 by Marcus's great-grandfather. The exterior was white clapboard with a wraparound porch, and even in the rain and darkness, it looked solid and welcoming. Marcus pulled around back to the detached garage. The truck's headlights sweeping across the neat yard and the vegetable garden that was his one concession to sentimentality. His late wife Emma had planted it, and he'd maintained it religiously in the 12 years since she'd passed. Ethan stirred as the engine cut off, blinking in confusion before seeming to remember where he was. "We're here," Marcus said quietly. "Come on, let's get you inside before we're both soaked." They made a dash for the back door, rain pelting them hard enough to sting. Marcus fumbled with his keys, finally getting the door open to the mudroom. Sadie, his 11-year-old border collie, appeared from the kitchen, tail wagging cautiously as she assessed the stranger. "This is Sadie," Marcus said, flipping on lights as they moved through the house. "She's harmless. Thinks she's still a pup, even though her joints say otherwise." Ethan knelt carefully and let Sadie sniff his hand before scratching behind her ears. The dog's tail picked up speed, and something in the boy's face softened the first real expression besides fear or exhaustion that Marcus had seen. "She likes you," Marcus observed. "That's a good sign. Sadie's picky about people." The kitchen was large and homey, with butcher block counters and copper pots hanging from a rack above the island. Marcus's housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, daughter-in-law of the man who'd helped him all those years ago, kept it spotless despite his protests that he didn't need the help. "You want something else to eat? I can make eggs, or there's leftover pot roast in the fridge." Ethan shook his head. "I'm okay. The sandwiches were enough." "All right, let me show you where you'll be staying." Marcus led him through the house, past the living room with its stone fireplace and comfortable, worn furniture, up the wooden staircase to the second floor. He paused at the second door on the left, his hand on the knob. "This was my daughter's room. She's grown now. Lives in Chicago. Works for some tech company." There was pride in his voice, and something else, an old sadness that came from loving someone who'd grown distant. "Haven't changed much since you left, but it's clean." He opened the door to reveal a room frozen in time. Band posters on the walls, a twin bed with a purple comforter, shelves lined with books and old trophies. It was the room of a girl who'd left for college at 18 and never really come home, and it made Marcus's heart ache every time he saw it. Bathrooms across the hall. "There should be towels in the cabinet, and I'll find you some clothes that'll fit well enough for sleeping. They'll be too big, but they'll be clean and dry." Ethan stood in the doorway, taking it all in. This is, he trailed off, seeming unable to find words. It's just a room, Marcus said gently, but it's yours for tonight. However long you need it, actually. You don't even know me, Ethan repeated. And now there was something raw in his voice. Like he might break. Don't need to know you to see you need help. Marcus clapped him gently on the shoulder, careful to avoid what might be bruised. Shower's going to feel good. I'll leave clothes outside the bathroom door. Come down when you're ready, and we'll put something on that bruise. He left Ethan standing there and went to his own room, rummaging through his dresser for the smallest t-shirt and sweatpants he owned. They'd still swallow the kid, but they'd do for tonight. He left them folded outside the bathroom door and went back downstairs to give Ethan some privacy. In the kitchen, Marcus filled Sadie's water bowl and poured himself a glass of whiskey, his one drink of the evening, a ritual that had started after Emma died and he'd found himself alone in this big house with nothing but his thoughts for company. He sat at the kitchen table, Sadie at his feet, and listened to the rain drum against the windows. What the hell was he doing? Bringing a strange kid home like this? He'd shocked himself with the offer. But now that Ethan was here, upstairs in Sarah's room, it felt right. The house had been too empty for too long. The water cut off upstairs, and a few minutes later, footsteps on the stairs. Ethan appeared in the kitchen doorway, swimming in Marcus's clothes, his dark hair wet and curling slightly, clean, and without the layer of dirt and fear. He looked even younger than Marcus had initially thought, 17, maybe, certainly not yet 20. Feel better? Marcus asked. Yeah. Ethan's hand went to his bruised cheek. Thanks. Sit down. Let me look at that. Marcus retrieved the first aid kit from under the sink and pulled a chair close to Ethan's. In the bright kitchen light, the damage was more apparent. The bruise was deepening to purple. His lip was split, but no longer bleeding, and those marks on his neck were definitely finger-shaped. This might sting, Marcus warned, gently cleaning the split lip with antiseptic. Ethan flinched but didn't pull away. You want to tell me who did this? My father, Ethan said flatly, and Marcus's hand stilled. Your father did this to you? Yeah, the word was bitter. Among other things, Marcus sat back, processing. Ethan, if your father, I don't want to talk about it. Ethan's voice was hard now, defensive. I told you, no police. I'm 18 in 3 weeks. I just need to survive until then. 3 weeks. Marcus's heart sank. The kid wasn't even 18 yet. Where's your mother in all this? Dead cancer, when I was 14. Ethan's fingers twisted in the oversized t-shirt. It's just been me and him since then. And he stopped, jaw clenched, but Marcus didn't push. He'd get the full story eventually, or he wouldn't. But the picture was becoming clearer. A kid stuck in an abusive home, counting down the days until legal adulthood and freedom. And something had happened tonight that forced him to run before that deadline. Well, Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm, you're safe here. For tonight, for 3 weeks, for however long you need. Nobody's going to hurt you under my roof. Ethan's eyes shone with unshed tears. Why are you being so nice to me? Because somebody should be. Marcus handed him an ice pack. Put this on that bruise. I'm going to make you some real food. Those gas station sandwiches aren't enough to keep a bird alive. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Marcus was already pulling out pans and ingredients. Besides, cooking relaxes me. My wife used to say I was the worst farmer she ever met who actually loved to cook. She passed 12 years ago. Aneurysm. Here one moment, gone the next. Marcus cracked eggs into a bowl, his movements practiced and efficient. We were married 22 years. Had one daughter, Sarah, whose room you're in. Emma was the love of my life, and not a day goes by I don't miss her. He wasn't sure why he was sharing this with a virtual stranger. Except that Ethan had shared his pain, and fair was fair. I'm sorry, Ethan said softly. Me too. Marcus whisked the eggs, added milk, salt, pepper. But that's life, isn't it? You love people, you lose people, you keep going. What else can you do? He cooked in silence for a wild cheese omelette with vegetables from the garden. toast, orange juice while Ethan sat at the table with the ice pack pressed to his face and Sadie's head in his lap. The scene felt domestic and strange and somehow exactly right. When Marcus set the plate in front of him, Ethan stared at it like he'd been given a treasure. "Thank you," he said, and started eating with more restraint than the gas station sandwiches. But still, with obvious hunger, Marcus refreshed his whiskey and sat across from him, Sadie settling between their chairs with a contented sigh. "So," Marcus said, "you got a plan? For after your birthday, I mean?" Ethan shook his head. "Not really. I thought I'd have more time to figure it out. I was going to wait until I turned 18, then leave. Had some money saved up." His face darkened. "He found it tonight. The money? And other things." Marcus waited, but Ethan didn't elaborate on what other things meant. "I have a college fund," Ethan continued. "My mom set it up before she died. He can't touch it, tits in a trust, but I can't access it until I'm 18, and even then, I need to be enrolled in school." "You planning on college?" Ethan pushed food around his plate. "I was supposed to start at Missouri State in the fall. I was going to major in English, maybe become a teacher or a writer or something, but that was before." He gestured vaguely at his bruised face. "Before what?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see him weighing how much to share, how much to trust. "Before he found out I'm gay," Ethan finally said, the words falling like stones into still water, and there it was. Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his heart ached for this kid who'd already been through so much. "I see." Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you see?" Because he sure as hell saw. "Found texts on my phone from a guy I'd been talking to. Not even dating, just talking. But that was enough." His hand went to the bruise again, an unconscious gesture. He said he'd rather have a dead son than a gay son. The slur hung unspoken between them, but Marcus heard it clearly enough. "That why you ran?" He was going to send me to one of those camps. Conversion therapy, or whatever they call it. Had the papers all printed out, a place picked out in Arkansas. Said he was taking me tomorrow morning. Ethan's voice cracked. I couldn't do it. So when he passed out drunk tonight, I just left. Walked for hours until I found that gas station. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing all of this. He wasn't a particularly political man. He voted, paid his taxes, and generally believed in letting people live their lives however they saw fit. His own views on sexuality were simple. Love was love, and anyone who had a problem with that was wasting energy better spent on actual problems. "Well," he said finally, "I can't say I know much about what you're going through, but I know this. You're not wrong for being who you are, and your father's dead wrong for treating you like this." Ethan looked up, surprise clear in his eyes. You don't have a problem with it? With you being gay? Why would I? Doesn't affect me one way or another, and more importantly, it's none of my damn business who you love." Marcus stood and took Ethan's empty plate to the sink. "What is my business is that you've got a safe place to sleep tonight and 3 weeks to figure out your next move. So here's what I'm proposing." He turned to face the boy, leaning against the counter. "You stay here. I've got more than enough room, and honestly, I could use the help around the farm." "You've ever done farm work?" Ethan shook his head. "Well, you'll learn. Nothing too strenuous, feeding animals, mending fences, maybe helping Mrs. Chen with the garden. In exchange, you get room and board until your birthday. That gives you 3 weeks to heal up, get your head straight, and figure out your plan for college or whatever else you want to do. You can't just, I'm a stranger. You don't owe me anything. No, I don't. But like I said, I'm passing forward a kindness that was given to me." And truthfully, Marcus smiled slightly. "This house gets pretty lonely with just me and Sadie. Might be nice to have another person around for a bit." Ethan stared at him, and Marcus could see the war happening behind those green eyes, again disbelief, fighting against desperate hope. "I don't know what to say. Say yes, or say you need to think about it. But Ethan, hear me clearly. You've got a place here for as long as you need it. No strings, No expectations beyond a bit of honest work and keeping your room clean. What if my father comes looking for me? Marcus's expression hardened. Then I'll deal with your father. This is my land, my home, and you're under my protection here. He wants to get to you. He's going to have to go through me first. The tears Ethan had been holding back finally spilled over. He wiped at them angrily, but they kept coming, great heaving sobs that shook his thin frame. Marcus crossed the kitchen and pulled the boy into an awkward hug, patting his back like he used to do when Sarah was little and had a nightmare. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're safe now. I promise you, you're safe." They stood like that for a long moment, an unlikely pair in a farmhouse kitchen at 1 in the morning, while the rain continued to fall and Sadie watched with wise, sympathetic eyes. When Ethan finally pulled back, wiping his face with the sleeve of Marcus's too big shirt, he managed a watery smile. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'll stay. And thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you, but don't worry about repaying me. Just focus on healing and figuring out your future." Marcus checked the clock on the microwave. "It's late, and I've got to be up in a few hours. You should get some sleep." Ethan nodded and headed toward the stairs, Sadie following him. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. "Marcus, thank you, really. You might have just saved my life tonight. Get some rest." "Ethan, tomorrow's a new day." After the boy disappeared upstairs, Marcus finished his whiskey and stood at the kitchen window, watching the rain and thinking about the strange turn his life had just taken. He'd woken up this morning a lonely farmer with a routine and a quiet life. Now he had a hurt, frightened kid upstairs who needed protection and guidance and kindness. It scared him a little, this sudden responsibility, but it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. "Well, Emma," he said quietly to the darkness, "if you're up there watching, I hope I'm doing the right thing." The rain was his only answer, but somehow, Marcus thought his late wife would approve. Part 3. New rhythms. Marcus's alarm went off at 4:30, same as every morning, and he silenced it with the automatic efficiency of decades of practice. He dressed in the dark jeans work shirt, boots, and was halfway down the stairs before he remembered the events of the previous night. He paused, listening, and heard nothing but the settling sounds of the old house. Let the kids sleep. God knew he needed it. In the kitchen, Marcus made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and fried himself eggs and bacon. He left a note on the table. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. I'll be back around noon. Stay inside and rest. Marcus. The morning was cool and clean after the rain, and the sun was just starting to paint the eastern sky pink. Marcus did his usual rounds, checking on the cattle in the near pastures, making sure the automated feeding systems were working properly, inspecting fence lines. He had a crew of 3 full-time hands who handled most of the day-to-day operations, but Marcus still liked to do the morning check himself. It centered him, reminded him why he did this work. By the time he returned to the house at 11:30, he half expected Ethan to be gone, spooked by the reality of staying with a stranger, deciding to take his chances on the road. But the F-250 parked around back had company, a beat-up red Toyota that Marcus recognized as belonging to Mrs. Chen. He found her in the kitchen with Ethan, the two of them working on lunch preparations. Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman with iron-gray hair and boundless energy despite her 60-some years, looked up as Marcus entered. "Marcus Whitfield. You didn't tell me you'd taken in a stray," she said. But her eyes were twinkling. It was a last-minute decision. Marcus nodded to Ethan, who looked better than he had last night, still bruised, but rested and cleaner. "Everything all right?" "Mrs. Chen's been teaching me how to make chicken soup," Ethan said. And there was something lighter in his voice than Marcus had heard before. "Real soup, not the stuff from a can." "My specialty," Mrs. Chen declared. "This boy needs feeding up. Too skinny by half." Marcus hid a smile. Mrs. Chen had been trying to feed him up for 20 years with limited success. Maybe she'd have better luck with Ethan. "I told her about," Ethan gestured vaguely at his face, then to Marcus, "about you taking me in. I hope that's okay." Course it's okay. Mrs. Chun's family. She knows how to keep a confidence. Marcus poured himself coffee from the fresh pot. Though I appreciate the discretion, Lee. Mrs. Chen waved a hand. This boy's running from trouble. Needs a safe place, that's all I need to know. And Marcus, you've got a good heart even if you hide it under all that gruff farmer exterior. I'm not gruff, Marcus protested. Both Ethan and Mrs. Chen gave him identical skeptical looks. And despite everything, he laughed. They ate lunch together, the soup, which was excellent, and fresh bread Mrs. Chen had brought from town. The conversation was light, carefully avoiding anything too heavy. And Marcus watched Ethan slowly relax, his shoulders losing some of their defensive tension. After Mrs. Chen left with instructions for Ethan to eat more and rest plenty, Marcus suggested a tour of the farm. If you're going to be here a while, might as well know the lay of the land. They walked the property line, Marcus pointing out the various pastures, the equipment barns, the grain silos. Ethan listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was actually paying attention. How much land is this? He asked as they stood on a rise overlooking the eastern fields. Just over 3,000 acres, about 2,000 in crops corn and soybeans, mostly, and the rest in pasture for the cattle. And you manage all this yourself? I've got help. Got 3 full-time hands, seasonal workers during planting and harvest, and contractors for the big equipment work. But yeah, it's my operation. Been in my family since 1887. Ethan was quiet for a moment, taking in the vast expanse of land rolling out toward the horizon. It's beautiful, peaceful. It can be. It's also hard work, long hours, and totally dependent on things outside your control, whether commodity prices, government policy. But yeah, when I stand here and look at all this, I can't imagine doing anything else. They walked on, and Marcus found himself talking more than he usually did, explaining the rhythms of farm life, the careful balance of economics and ecology, the satisfaction of watching things grow. Ethan was an attentive audience, and Marcus realized he'd missed this, having someone to share his knowledge with, to pass down what he'd learned. By the time they returned to the house, it was late afternoon, and Ethan was visibly tired despite the earlier rest. Why don't you take a nap before dinner? Marcus suggested. We'll start you on some light work tomorrow if you're feeling up to it. Ethan nodded and headed upstairs with Sadie at his heels. The dog had clearly adopted the boy as her new charge. That evening, Marcus made dinner: grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, rice, and they ate on the back porch. Watching the sun set over the fields, the silence was comfortable now, not awkward, and when Ethan finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I keep waiting for the catch, he said. Catch? Yeah, like you're being too nice. Nobody's just nice like this without wanting something in return. He looked at Marcus directly. What do you want from me? Marcus considered the question carefully. Honest answer. I want you to heal up, figure out your path forward, and leave here better than you arrived. That's it. No hidden agenda, no expectations beyond what I said: help around the farm. Keep your space clean, try to move forward with your life. You're not? I mean, Ethan struggled with the words. Some guys, when they pick up boys like me, understanding dawned, and Marcus felt a surge of anger, not at Ethan, but at whatever experiences had taught this kid to expect the worst from people offering help. Ethan, look at me. He waited until the boy met his eyes. I'm offering you a place to stay and some honest work. That's it. I'm not interested in you that way. And even if I were, which I'm not, you're 17 years old and under my protection. Nothing inappropriate is going to happen here. You have my word on that. Ethan's relief was palpable. I'm sorry, I had to make sure. Don't apologize for protecting yourself. It's smart to be cautious. But I need you to understand something. This is your home for as long as you need it, and you're safe here. Completely safe. Got it? Got it. Ethan's smile was small but genuine. Thank you, Marcus. They finished dinner as the stars began to appear, and Marcus found himself feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Contentment. The kind that came from doing the right thing, from offering shelter to someone who needed it. Part 4. Finding grounded days fell into a rhythm. Ethan proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, despite never having done farm work before. Marcus started him with simple tasks: feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, helping Mrs. Chen in the vegetable garden. As the bruises faded from purple to yellow-green, Ethan took on more: mending fences, cleaning out stalls, helping with equipment maintenance. Marcus watched him carefully those first few days, looking for signs that it was too much, that the boy was pushing himself too hard. But Ethan seemed to thrive on the physical labor. The haunted look gradually faded from his eyes, replaced by something Marcus recognized from his own experience: the peace that came from honest work and tired muscles. They talked more to not about anything heavy at first, just the day's work, the animals, the weather. But gradually, Ethan began to open up about his life before. "My mum was a teacher," he said one evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner. "High school English. She loved books more than anything. Except me, I guess." He smiled at the memory. "She'd read to me every night until I was like 12, even when I could read perfectly well myself. She said stories were meant to be shared. Sounds like she was a good mother. The best? She always knew I was different. I think she knew I was gay before I did. But she never made a big deal about it, just made sure I knew I was loved exactly as I was." His expression darkened. "My father was different when she was alive. Not warm, exactly, but not cruel either. It was like she balanced him out somehow. After she died, he just hardened. Everything became about control and appearances and doing things the right way. That when the trouble started, not right away, but yeah, gradually, he got stricter, angrier. Nothing I did was good enough. And when I started high school and started figuring out who I was," Ethan shrugged, "I tried to hide it. Dated a girl for a while, even though it felt wrong. But he's not stupid. He noticed I wasn't like the other boys, started making comments, pushing me toward sports I hated, mocking anything he thought was too feminine. That must have been hard. It was hell." Ethan's voice was flat. "But I thought I could survive it. Just 2 more years until college, you know. I could pretend for 2 more years, then I'd be free." "What changed?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I met someone, Noah. He was in my creative writing class. We started talking about books, then about everything else. He was the first person I could be completely honest with about who I was. We weren't dating or anything. He had a boyfriend, but he became my friend. My only real friend." "Your father found the texts from him?" "Yeah, I'd been so careful, but I got sloppy one time. Left my phone on the counter while I was in the shower. He went through it." Ethan's hand unconsciously went to his jaw, where the worst of the bruising had been. "When I came out, he was holding my phone. I knew immediately, the look on his face. He didn't need to finish." Marcus could imagine it clearly enough. "I'm sorry that happened to you. No kid should have to go through that." "I know I'm lucky," Ethan said. "Some kids, their parents kick them out, or worse. At least I had somewhere to run to." He looked at Marcus. "I had you." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. In just over a week, this kid had worked his way into Marcus's heart in a way he hadn't expected. It reminded him of when Sarah was young, before she'd grown up, and grown apart from him, back when she'd thought her dad hung the moon. "Speaking of your father," Marcus said carefully, "any word from him? Has he tried to contact you?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't think he knows where I am, and I doubt he's looking very hard. He probably figures I'll come crawling back eventually." "You won't, though, never." The word was fierce. "I'd rather sleep on the street than go back to that house." "Won't come to that," Marcus assured him. "You've got 5 more days until you're 18. Then legally, he can't touch you. And then what?" Ethan asked quietly. "I mean, I appreciate everything you've done, Marcus, more than I can say, but I can't stay here forever. I need to figure out what comes next." Marcus had been thinking about that. "What about college? You said you had that fund from your mother." "Yeah, but the fall semester already started. I'd have to wait until spring, maybe next fall. So you wait. You keep working here, save up some money, I'll pay you proper wages and, when spring semester comes, you enroll. Missouri State's only about 40 minutes from here. You could commute, or get an apartment in town. You'd really keep me on that long as you want to stay. Like I said, I can use the help. And honestly, Ethan, it's been nice having someone else around. House doesn't feel so empty anymore. Ethan smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look young and hopeful, instead of haunted. I'd like that. I'd really like that. Ethan's 18th birthday fell on a Thursday, overcast and cool with the first real hint of autumn in the air. Marcus had planned something simple but meaningful. Enlisting Mrs. Chun's help to make sure everything was perfect, he woke Ethan early with a knock on the door and a gruff rise and shine. Birthday boy. Downstairs, the kitchen table was laden with breakfast pancakes, bacon, eggs, fresh fruit, orange juice, and coffee. Mrs. Chen had arrived at dawn to help cook, and she greeted Ethan with a warm hug and a cheerful happy birthday. You didn't have to do all this, Ethan said, but his eyes were bright with pleasure. Course we did, Marcus said. 18's a big birthday. Means you're officially an adult, legally free to make your own choices. They ate together, the three of them, plus Sadie begging, hopefully under the table, and the conversation was light and full of laughter. After breakfast, Marcus handed Ethan a small wrapped box. It's not much, he said, suddenly feeling awkward. But I thought you might need it. Ethan unwrapped the box carefully to reveal a new smartphone, already charged and set up. Marcus, this is too much, you need a phone, can't have you working here without a way to contact me if something goes wrong. And besides, you can't apply to college without a phone number. Marcus shifted his weight, uncomfortable with gratitude. There's also this. He handed over an envelope. Inside was a birth certificate, a social security card, and a Missouri State ID with Ethan's photo, all the documents he'd need to prove his identity and age. How did you? Ethan stared at the documents. I've got connections, and your father couldn't exactly report them missing without explaining why his son ran away. Marcus had pulled some strings, called in some favors from people he'd helped over the years. It had cost him, but seeing Ethan's face made it worth every penny. I don't know what to say, don't say anything. Just use them to build the life you want. Mrs. Chen produced a birthday cake chocolate with vanilla frosting, Ethan's favorite, according to what he'd mentioned in passing weeks ago. They sang happy birthday, and when Ethan blew out the candles, Marcus saw tears on his cheeks. Sorry, Ethan said, wiping them away. I never thought I'd have this. A real birthday, with people who actually care. Well, you've got it now, Mrs. Chen said firmly. And you'll have it every year, if Marcus and I have anything to say about it. That afternoon, Marcus drove Ethan into town to the bank. With his new ID and birth certificate, Ethan was able to access his mother's trust fund, a fortune, but enough to pay for 4 years of state school, with some left over for living expenses. Your mother must have loved you very much, the bank officer said as she processed the paperwork, to set this up so carefully.